Welcome to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that's perfectly balanced as all things should be. My name is Isaac Edlin. I'm your host tonight, and with me I have one very special Infinity Bro. He's the enigma of the Infinity Bros universe. It's Zayne Ellis.
Hello. Happy to be here. Got to make my semi-regular appearances. I can't appear too much because then I might lose some of my enigma status, but
True. That is true. That's why we labeled you an enigma initially, is because you mysteriously came and went from the Infinity Bros podcast. But now that you've become a regular, can you even say that you're an enigma? I don't know.
I mean, but that's also the nature of the enigma. I can be here a lot, and then all of a sudden I can disappear again. You never know.
Just that mysterious aura about you.
Exactly.
That's what makes you an enigma.
I'm like a wizard. I'm never early or late. I arrive precisely when I mean.
Amen to that quote. Love that one. Listeners, if you're new to the Infinity Bros, we're a group of 6 guys who like to chat movies, TV shows, video games, pop culture, have some fun. We have a lot of different segments that we would love for you guys to check out. You can go back in our library to hear different episodes of the Infinity Bros podcast. We just hit 200 episodes, Zayne.
That's big time.
Big time, for real. Last week, we shared some of our best memories of the Infinity Bros podcast on the podcast, like on air. Do you have any really fond memories of the Infinity Bros podcast that you want to share with us, Zayne?
Probably all the times Robbie said something stupid.
Oh, yes. Which is a fair amount. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. I don't think I could pick just one because it's just about every single time he's on an episode.
My favorite Robbie quote is when he said that She-Hulk is dumb just because he didn't like her. He had literally no backup reason for why he didn't like her. He's just like, it's just a girl version of the Hulk, and that's stupid.
But yet,
I've never read a lick of comic books about her at all, but I think she's dumb.
That's elite. We also can't his elite get your merch bit.
Ooh, that was a good one.
That's an elite Robbie bit.
That was back in the streaming days of that was Infinity Bros, because that was literally an Infinity Bros ad we used for a while.
Right.
Man, yeah, that was back when we were streaming a couple times a month. Those were good times too. Yeah. I really do hope that eventually we can get back to that, but
that would be fun.
Life just happens. We've all got busyness going on, so
it has a funny way of being like that, but
Yeah. But anyways, listeners, you can check out the Infinity Bros on social media. Just look for the thumbs up Infinity Gauntlet. You can check us out at theinfinitybros.com for all your Infinity Bros needs. And you can hit up Robbie selling cards on Drip, hopefully again soon, because he just moved houses. I'm hoping that he's got a whole basement for his setup. This time he can just claim it and just not allow kids or wives or anything down there. It's just the man cave type of thing.
Yep.
Along with his pool and outdoor bar that he has and his new pool boy, Zayne Ellis.
Yeah.
Big things happening at the Solder House.
There was a lot of perks came with that house.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, it'll be nice to see him back on Drip selling cards again. Zayne, I've actually been delving into Star Wars Unlimited a little bit. I was a little bummed we didn't really have time to play any during our Bros weekend that we had last month. I think it's a solid game that you would really enjoy. It's basically, it's basically Star Wars magic. So it's right up your and my alley for sure. And I feel like magic intimidates me because it's so huge and there's so many cards, and I'm just I have no idea what to start with. I don't know what's
where to go.
But Star Wars Unlimited just came out 3 months ago, and the second set is coming out in July. I've gotten a fair amount of cards, enough to make a few decks, and then I have the starter decks that they sell in the 2-pack or whatever. So my local game store is doing a pre-release event for that release, and I'm thinking I might actually check it out. I've been to like a night or two of the Star Wars Unlimited weekly play at my
Hmm.
LGS too, and it's a good time. It's pretty fun.
Nice.
It is a commitment. Like, I don't get how these people just like are able to do it all the time, like every week. Because it's like you go there and you spend probably 4 hours like
Oh wow.
doing because each round that you play is like 55 minutes or something like that. Like, that's the time limit.
Right.
And I think the times that I've been there, we played 3 rounds. So it's like, it's a nice chunk of time,
Oh, for sure.
Kudos to those dudes who are showing up at their LGSs and just hammering away at those trading card games. Because I mean, it is a good time. It's a good time. But yeah, it's a little bit of a commitment, honestly. I think we should get together sometime soon, Zane, and play a little bit, because it's a fun time.
I'm always game for that. I'm never say no to board games,
Oh
card
yeah.
games.
Zane,
They're just
Zane,
fun.
you're like one of the. I see you and Jared are like the board game guys of the Infinity Bros.
It's always a good time.
Yeah, Zane's literally got a giant backpack that he brings his board games around in. So
It's true.
he's serious when he shows up with his board.
Well, I mean,
Games.
technically I have two of them now, but
Is
yeah.
one of them specifically for your unmatched stuff?
Yes, one is
That's
just
why.
for all my unmatched stuff. Yes,
That's incredible. I'm very impressed that you have something like that.
well, I mean, that also just became the game of mine that I'm just like, I fully committed. Like, I'm going to
Right.
buy every single
This is
set
the
that comes
one.
out. Like, it's just
Yeah.
it. And so, yeah, it's like, as I've bought more and more, it's like, well, I need
Yeah, dude.
somewhere to hold it. Like,
We've talked about it before, but that Deadpool set is selling for like $200 on eBay.
oh yeah, the Deadpool and the Bruce Lee, because
The Bruce Lee, yeah.
they aren't getting re-released. So yeah, you go on
Right.
eBay, they're going for $200-300 a piece, and it's just
Wild,
like,
man.
jeez.
That's awesome though. But Unmatched is a very fun game, highly endorsed by the Infinity Bros. So if you haven't,
Yes,
check that out. Make sure you
absolutely.
do that. All right, Zane, we've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to hit a ton of shows that just premiered in the month of June. We have one left to premiere still, too. So the next like 2 months are going to be full of reviews of these TV shows that are coming out. The Bear is premiering next week, I believe. And that is a Hulu original. We've got House of the Dragon that we're going to talk about on Max. We've got Star Wars The Acolyte on Disney Plus. And we've got The Boys on Amazon Prime. All of them have premiered in the last like 3 weeks. So we've got a ton to talk about. And you guys know Zane and Isaac mess arounds. I mean, we could talk for hours on
Right.
Star Wars alone. So throw House of the Dragon and The Boys in there, and this could be a long one. So buckle up. Before we get to that, I do have a couple bits of nerd news.
Hey, Zane, I was looking into getting into this Gunpla thing. There's one called the Unicorn Banshee. What the heck is that all about? Actually, Jarrett, what you're thinking of is RX-0 Unicorn Gundam 2 Banshee, which is from the Mobile Suit Gundam. Actually, you know what? It's time for nerd news.
Alrighty, Zane. 2 things that I wanted to touch on. Number 1 is Inside Out 2. Obviously, we knew this has been coming out for a while. One of Pixar's most beloved movies, Inside Out, finally gets a sequel. And holy crap, it blew almost every movie so far this year out of the water. It came out with a 155 million domestic opening, which is bonkers.
That's big time
for an animated movie. Like, I was not expecting it to do these numbers. And I like Inside Out as much as anybody. I've got kids. We're probably going to be going to Inside Out 2 eventually. I was not expecting the numbers that this thing is putting out. So yeah, 155 million domestic. That is just in the United States. And currently, after the opening weekend, worldwide, it is sitting at 295 million.
Dang.
After one weekend. That's wild.
That's
and
incredibly good.
Yeah, right? Like, and we actually said, we reviewed the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer a couple weeks back. I'm trying to remember what episode. It's probably like episode 197 or 198 of the Infinity Bros podcast. I remember you specifically saying, like, what else could possibly come close to Deadpool and Wolverine in terms of
Right.
box office. Inside Out 2 might make $1 billion at this point, which is wild to think about. I did not see this coming at all.
Yeah, very unexpected. Like, I don't think anyone did. Like, you need the first one's good and stuff, and usually
Yeah.
like there was nothing like the trailers for even the second one. There was nothing to show that like, oh yeah, this still looked solid. But I don't know. Apparently,
Yeah.
people just really clambered on this one because yeah, you're just like, how is it doing as well as it is? But
Yeah.
kudos.
I don't know either. Like, and again, Inside Out is a great movie. Pixar is a great studio, like great reputation. So everybody knew this is going to be good, right? But like in general, the numbers have been pretty rough this year. Like, I think everybody's just the theater industry has been in decline for a while, and this year is like showing it.
Right.
Comes back in force with this weekend. It is the second biggest opening for an animated movie of all time. The first being Incredibles 2, so Disney Pixar again. And then the third, which Inside Out surpassed, being Super Mario Bros. So like
Oh,
this
wow.
is big even among previous animated releases, not just for this year. So yeah, crazy big news. Now I'm thinking like this is probably going to surpass Deadpool and Wolverine for sure, because Deadpool and Wolverine is rated R. We talked about that when we reviewed the trailer. I think Deadpool and Wolverine still is going to make $1 billion, but at the rate that Inside Out 2 is going, I mean, this could be like a 1.5, almost $2 billion movie. So
That's true. I mean, it's really going to depend, yeah, on the second week of,
mhm,
what is the drop off going to be or anything.
right.
But I
It'll
mean,
be
yeah,
interesting.
it's one of those pleasant surprises because, yeah, you didn't expect it to have this much of a start. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how it keeps going.
Very much needed boost for the theater industry this year, because the numbers have been sad this year. Mad Max Furiosa totally bombed. I think over the course of a month they made like 160 some million. So it's not been looking good
Right.
for the theaters this year. So yeah, this is a jolt of energy for the theater industry. So that is a good thing. And I do like, yeah, I know we're kind of all on the streaming train. Like we all are like, oh sure, like anything comes out streaming, we're gonna watch it. We're not like the people that are theater snobs and
Right.
only seeing movies in theaters or anything like that. But the theater experience is still a fun one, and that I love going to with my kids and stuff like that. So I don't want it to go away
Right.
necessarily. Now, am I going to, donate my own money to save the theater industry? No. But I don't want it to go away, so going to see these movies and supporting the theater industry, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Big stuff happening Inside Out too. All right, next thing on Nerd News, Zane. And this kind of will lead into our first review here. Eric Kripke, the showrunner of Prime Video's The Boys, confirmed prior to the premiere of season 4 that season 5 will be the final season of The Boys. So, what do you think about The Boys ending? Interesting that they make that announcement right before season 4 premieres. Do you think there's a reason for that?
I would assume the reasoning kind of falls more in that you can kind of look at this season then as kind of a bit more of a setup because all right, if season 5 is going to be the last, like this is kind of the final leg of the race, if you will, of what we get in 4. Because you got to figure you're going into 5, you're not going to spend too much of 5 on a bunch of exposition setting stuff up. I feel like you use 4, tie off kind of your loose end, almost like if you're playing a video game and you get to that last 90% and then how it tells you, hey, make sure you have everything done because once you advance to the last level, you can't go back.
Yeah,
I like that announcement like that because it almost feels like that. You can kind of take everything, figure it out in 4, now 5. All right, we can just kind of focus on our end game. And
right.
I like it too, just the fact of saying, hey, we're ending it at 5 because we've all seen shows that they just keep trying to drag on and then it really just kind of just tarnishes it. It feels like, because
Yeah.
you're just like, it just goes so downhill. So it's like
Game of Thrones.
yeah, Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead. Like, I mean, there's many. I'll throw Supernatural in there. Like, there's many shows that it just kept going, and you're just like, tell the story and end on that high note. Like, don't keep dragging it out
Right.
for the views or clicks or whatever. So I like that. It'd be like, hey, we're in it at 5. Here's the story we're trying to tell. And then, well, especially with like The Boys, and then like we had with Gen V, like you can do spin-offs. You can add to that universe.
Yeah,
like
true.
you don't have to just keep dragging this along. So I like that. Say, hey, yep, we're ending it at 5. This is the story we're telling, and we're sticking with it. So I like that.
I'll agree with you there. I think it's good news because I think when the showrunner has a vision for how this show is going from the get-go and how it's going to end, that generally makes for a better show. Like you said, we all know these shows that just keep going and going and going and overstaying their welcome, and then by the end of it, everybody's just not interested anymore. And I don't think that is going to be the case with The Boys, obviously, because as we will find out later in this podcast episode, I mean, we're still very excited about this season and next season, obviously. So I think it's good news. A little sad that it's ending, but at the same time, I'd rather it end with a bang instead of petering out. That's our nerd news for today. All right, Zane, we've got a lot of shows to get into. Crazy month of television that we're getting a ton of premieres for. We already actually reviewed the premiere of The Acolyte on episode 200 of the Infinity Bros podcast. Every time I say 200, I'm just like, I can't believe we've got 200 episodes. It's wild.
Got there.
But yeah, Mark and Robbie and I got together to review the first 2 episodes. So we'll get Zane in there to give a little bit of his opinion on the first 2 episodes along with 3 and 4. And we're going to talk about The Boys' first 3 episodes that premiered on Amazon Prime, and House of the Dragon, the first episode that premiered on Max as well. So before we get into that, we're going to give you guys an official rating bumper on how we rate things on the Infinity Bros podcast.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an Infinity Step.
So if you hear us give a number rating to something, that is how we do things here on the Infinity Bros podcast. All right, Zane, are you ready to dive deep into television in the month of June?
Absolutely. That's what I'm here for, Isaac.
I know it. It's going to be great. I can't wait. All right, since we already just capped off nerd news with The Boys, let's dive into that first. We had a crazy season 3 with Soldier Boy, and now actually the spinoff Gen V happening it was later last year in 2023. We were told that The Boys season 4 was going to pick up right where Gen V left off. Some interesting ways to introduce this season. We're probably not going to give any non-spoiler reviews on this episode just because we have so much to cover. So I'm going to go ahead and give a spoiler warning right here.
This is...
Prepare yourself.
An Infinity Bros.
Prepare yourself.
Spoiler. Warning.
Obviously, first spoiling for The Boys, and then I'll give a separate, kind of half spoiler warning for The Acolyte and House of the Dragon when we get to those points as well. But what did you think of the first 3 episodes of The Boys, Zane? And what do you think about the Gen V tie-in? I know you probably were on some of those episodes last year when we were reviewing those, but what do you think of all that? What do you think the first 3 episodes of The Boys?
I thought the first 3, they were solid. Like, I think they weren't quite as in your face or maybe as over the top as some of the previous seasons. I mean, they touched it a little bit in one specific scene, but it was a little slower, I think. But they also were running way more of, hey, we're kind of setting up this story. We kind of got everything going. So it was kind of a bit more of the dialogue, the group dynamics, kind of running more with that. So not quite as much of the action and not quite as much of the crazy you've come to expect with the boys, even though there was a little bit of that there. But I still think it was very solid first 3 episodes to start with.
I'm in the same boat as you. You got those flashes, those moments where it's like, oh man, this is the boys. Like, we're back. Here we
Right.
are. But it definitely felt like building, and not in a bad way either. Like, you definitely, some other shows, which we'll probably mention on the back end of this episode, some shows you get the sense that they're trying to build something, but it's not that interesting. And you're just like, where's this going?
Right.
I don't know. And it's okay to not know. I don't think we need to know everything right now, but it still needs to be interesting and engaging when we're building, right? Like, and I think The Boys does that very well. And it's okay to do that because it's building up to something big, probably in the last 2 to 3 episodes of this season.
Right.
And then, like you said, into season 5, the last season of The Boys. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's good, and we got those little flashes of things that we're, expecting from The Boys.
Right.
I know in our chat we had a few people mention just, you don't even have to say anything about it, but just the Splinter scene.
Right. You
And
just know.
it's just like, whoa, okay. This is exactly what we're expecting from The Boys. So we get kind of the storyline of Butcher, who is diagnosed with terminal cancer from consuming that like temporary V from
Temp
last
V.
season, Temp V. And so he's kind of trying to rekindle this relationship with Ryan. And we get a little glimpse of how Ryan finally is kind of like, I mean, last season we got him just kind of going along with Homelander, and honestly, with a guy like Homelander, like, what else do you do? Like, that's what everybody else does. That's kind of the theme of one of those episodes, is like, hey, everybody's doing what Homelander wants to do. Homelander gets pissed about it because nobody's challenging him or giving him like good feedback, basically. And finally, when they're, kind of rekindling that relationship, we get some really what Ryan thinks, which is pretty cool. They have a very authentic relationship, I think, which is cool because Ryan's a dork, man. Like, I don't know. Every time I see him on the screen, I'm just like, man, this kid. I can't with this kid. And not as like, I think that's what they wrote him and meant him to be. So I don't think it's the actor playing it wrong or anything. But like, yeah, he's just a dork of a kid. That little glimpse of, before they do that, of them playing that Mortal Kombat-esque game with the members of the Seven as the characters, that was cool. That was a really cool nod.
Yeah, I got more like the Injustice mix, but it was
right.
It was like, that was clever. Well, even just the fact that how they, and like, you had this whole animated sequence of it, and you're like, that was clever. Well, not only that, but then just the fact that then Butcher like used that as the mode to reach out, and then what Butcher's username was. You're just like, yeah, that's funny. You're just like, all right, that's
exactly what we would expect from Billy Butcher.
It's on par.
On par. So there's been a lot of as a lot of things with the internet, there's a loud minority of people that are kind of pushing back on this season of The Boys, saying that it's woke. Honestly, at this point, what piece of media is there not a sect of the internet that's calling it woke? Like, everything is being called woke these days. This one in particular just makes me chuckle because this is a satirical anti-superhero show.
Like, that's the whole point of the show. Like,
yes, it's literally making fun of superheroes, making fun of both the right and the left, like political divisions at the same time. I don't understand.
Well, The
of the
irony of it too is how much it spills over, and like you'll see that in comment sections too. It's people arguing online of, oh, it's so ironic that it's making fun of you and you don't realize it, and then the other people, oh, it's making fun of you and you don't realize it. And you're like, all right,
It's
neither of
making
you
fun
are
of
realizing
everybody.
it. It's because it's
Yeah.
making fun of both of you, and you guys are too.
Yeah, it's
like,
a
how are you
conflated
not
version
understanding it?
of the right and the left,
Right.
and in a world that is similar to ours, granted,
Right.
they make it seem like that, but yeah, it's making fun of everything. Like,
Right.
guys, you can't take this show seriously. It
Right.
literally is the opposite of serious.
Yeah.
Don't do
literally.
that. But man, yeah, when I saw TruthCon, I was like, Mark would be all
Right.
over that place. Infinity Bro Mark would be at TruthCon. He would be just chatting it up with everybody there, just agreeing with everybody on all their conspiracies, collecting pamphlets and
Oh yeah,
flyers.
it'd be so
Yep.
great. Yeah,
That'd be it'd be fun to be just a fly on a wall, just watching Mark at TruthCon. Oh
I'm glad I'm
man.
not the only one who like had that thought watching that too. Just like
Oh yeah, totally. I
Mark
was
would
like,
absolutely love it there.
this
Like,
is Mark's jam right now. So the one other thing I wanted to mention is, so we get this new character, Firecracker, who is kind of like a play on like a right-wing grifter, basically. She's just like decrying everything that the left is doing, blah, 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 all that stuff. We get an interesting twist that she actually is a childhood rival of Starlight, which that I was not expecting. The boys still has some cards up their sleeves
right.
every once in a while. Like, if there's one thing you can say about the boys, it's that it still is a fairly unpredictable show. And granted, they probably are following some vague comic book storylines. So if you know the comic books front and back, you probably have some semblance of like what they're trying to do here. But I've also heard that the storyline is very different as well.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't. I don't know. Either way, the comic books are not good, so it doesn't really matter.
Right, exactly. Like that's all I've heard too. That what the show is doing is significantly better than anything the comics did. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't know where the deviate. Like I'm pretty sure it was up through like season 3. Like it followed a fair amount of stuff that was in the comics, but I could be wrong. But I thought like 4 and now 5 is where stuff was really supposed to kind of start veering off into its own, doing its own thing. Which I mean, already you're into that just because of Black Noir. They've completely pivoted from that and everything.
Yeah.
So obviously they're very much doing things different.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, there's some interesting things happening, and the one other character that I think is going to be a pivotal role in this season is Sister Sage. So she's a new member of the Seven, who is the smartest person in the world, and I actually like the route that they're taking on this, of not just being like another typical superhero. It's just like she's just really smart, and she knows every move that everybody's going to make. She knows the best moves to make. And I love the relationship that she has with Homelander. Homelander knows that she's way smarter than him, but he still just cannot help but do things his way.
Right.
It's inevitable that he's going to do things the way he wants to do them, which kind of messes with her plans every once in a while. So love that relationship.
Yeah, that's been a fun one because it's like, and that was kind of the whole point of what we've seen from this season, that he was sick and tired of yes men around him. He's like, he wanted someone to tell him no. Well, he went out and found that person, but now it's just like, what's going on behind the scenes now with Sister Sage? Because it's just like with her intelligence, because like that's honestly like that is how you beat Homelander.
Yeah.
And like that's what a lot of people have seen, like the parallels of like that's the Lex Luthor character. Well, Lex Luthor gives Superman run for his money all the time, so you kind of have that parallel of intellect and strength and how that's going to play in, and it's an interesting way to kind of flip some of that power dynamic that we've had in previous seasons.
And like they have not been letting it on, but I get the impression that she's building herself some security, basically. Like she knows that she needs Homelander to need her.
Right.
So she's kind of building this like empire for him. But I have a inkling that down the road she's gonna reveal her cards and be like, all right, well, now you can't get rid of me because of this, this, and
Right.
this. And if you try to, this, this, and this will happen. So because again, she's the smartest person in the world. So she definitely can see, and she know, like, Homelander's not hard to read. Like,
Right.
dude knows what he wants and he will do whatever you want to get it. So yeah, it's a very interesting relationship, and it kind of brings Homelander down a notch, which I think he needs to stay interesting, because in and of itself, Homelander's not that interesting of a character. It's how he interacts with other people that makes him interesting.
Right.
So yeah, this relationship I'm really digging. I really like how they're kind of playing off each other, and how she isn't afraid to just like speak her mind around
Right.
Homelander, while everybody else around him, like you said, is just a yes man. Oh man, the one scene in the 7 conference room or whatever, and
Right.
parents avert your kids' ears for a second, where Leonard just says to Deep, okay, go blow a train. And they're literally about to do it.
Right. They're just like looking at each other, and then the fact he's just like, no, stop.
Guys,
like
just
seriously. Right. It's just like, oh man.
See, how can you watch that scene and then get mad and call it woke? Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, this show is a whole satire, man. You can't call it woke. It just doesn't work like that.
But again, maybe that's the whole point. It's so woke, and it's also anti-woke at the same time.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. It's like over the top woke and anti-woke at the same time. Like, that's the nature of satire. Like, you're playing off of that. Interesting developments in the first part of season 3. What would you rate? Let's just give it an overall rating for the first 3 episodes, the premiere of The Boys. What would you rate it?
First 3, it was a 5. Like, it was good. Just kept stuff going. I enjoyed it. Kept me, engaged. Like, yeah, I'll say it's a 5.
I'm going to go a little higher than that. I really enjoyed it, giving it a 5.5. I don't think it measures up quite to season 3. Like, I feel like every season they're just ramping up the craziness, ramping up the wild level of stuff happening.
Right.
So it's not there yet, but definitely will get there by the end of the season, because it's The Boys. That's just what happens.
That's what they do.
But I am missing Jensen Ackles as Soldier Boy. Like, man, he made season 3 so much fun.
He made it so, yeah, I agree with that. But we didn't get Jensen Ackles, but we do get Jeffrey Dean Morgan this season. So, I mean, that's
true. Yep.
That's a decent trade-off.
Yeah, he's another interesting addition that we haven't seen much of yet.
Right.
But I'm excited
I think he's going to play more of a bigger role coming down the line here.
And he's a CIA.
Yes.
And he's kind of working with Billy Butcher on the side, because Billy Butcher gets fired from The Boys.
Right.
Yeah, I think they're going to have some interesting things to do with him, because he definitely seems like he's about to kind of take things into his own hands at this point. After Billy Butcher he veers off of the original plan that they had between them. So yeah, it'll be cool to see. And yeah, great casting with Jeffrey Dean Morgan. So that'll be awesome. So I gave it a 5.5. I think it can get up to a 6, up to the level that we're expecting from The Boys by the end of the season for sure. All right, next up, Zayne. House of the Dragon season 2. This premiered on Sunday on Max, and holy cow, it kind of blew my socks off a little bit. Season 1 was solid. It was good. I wouldn't say it really drew me in like the original Game of Thrones show. I think the draw to this one is obviously the dragons. The show is called House of the Dragon. But a lot of the timeline jumps in season 1 just, I don't know.
That was a killer.
They kept throwing me off, and I just couldn't fully get into it like I could Game of Thrones. So that's what held me back. But wow, episode 1 was a banger, and I think I'm probably more engaged and interested than I was almost all of season 2 or season 1 at this point, and after just one episode. I don't know, man. What did you think of the first episode?
It was good. I enjoyed it. Like, I think it still kept the story of everything we had from the first. It kind of hit the ground running. Interestingly enough, that I felt like even though we had this gap between what we had from the end of season 1 to this, like, it still didn't feel like it lost that emotion. And I get, there's the flashbacks and all this. Like, it's still, I thought they did a good job of still kind of setting the emotional state of all the characters coming into
Yeah.
the start of this one, which I think was necessary, and they did a good job of it. I didn't realize it was something I wanted as much, but we kind of got the glimpse of it. Is now, like, I would love then just that spin-off, like, give me more of that stories of the Stark when they're there on the wall and he flies up there to talk to him,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and how he's just like, man, why are you guys just guarding this wall? And he just looks at him and he's just like, well, I don't know, our ancestors built a 700-foot wall to do more than just keep snowflakes and wildlings out.
Yeah.
And you're just like, all right, that's
Yep.
that stark, just that snippiness, and you're just like, so that was kind of an unexpected scene that I was like, all right, I like that. I wasn't expecting that, but I was like, I could delve into that more. And then in the middle, kind of more of the dialogue heavy, but then the end of episode 1, and you're just like, all right, right. It goes.
That's the Game of Thrones that we expected.
Oh, exactly.
Really, I feel like House of the Dragon really toned back that like really violent, gory tone that we got in Game of
Well,
Thrones.
they decided to be like, hey, guess what? Not for this season.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, oh, okay.
Man. Yeah, that was what got me going. I felt the same way about pretty much the whole episode. I was like, yeah, this is good. Like, great, awesome. But the last 5 minutes of that episode, I was like, oh boy, I'm all in now. Let's go.
Yep.
Yeah, Daemon's just like, I'm gonna go all in, committing war crimes. Let's go kill this kid. Like,
yep,
what?
Just okay. You're like, all right, well, this really is ramping up from what we had in season 1.
Yeah,
you're just like,
no kidding.
Like, all right.
And it was so powerful that so Rhaenyra obviously loses her son. That, which, by the way, haven't mentioned anything about that. The end of season 1, that was probably one of the craziest season cliffhangers of all time, with Rhaegar. I think, is it Rhaegar, the huge dragon? Rhaegar, something like that.
Yeah,
a huge dragon
Vhagar.
with Aemond.
Vhagar. I think it's Vhagar.
Vhagar, something Agar, yeah, Vhagar.
Yeah.
with Aemond just literally snaps not Jaehaerys. I forget their Lucerys, I think is his name. Just snaps his dragon literally in half. I was like, what? What? I wasn't even invested in most of the season.
Right.
And then you do this. What the heck? But we come to this one, and Rhaenyra is like grieving her son, obviously. And she says one line in this whole episode, and it is powerful. She comes back and she's like ready to kick butt, and she's like, I want Aemond. and Daemon's like, all right, let's go kill some kids.
Just like, all right, I'm all in. That's all you had to say.
Like, yeah, literally, he was sitting there waiting for her to like give the nod for him to go do war crimes, and that was it. That's all he needed. So,
and just the fact that, yeah, it's just the summarization of it's just like, she took my son, I'm gonna take hers.
Yeah, right.
Just like, all right.
So, okay, something that I thought was interesting, and I don't know, maybe I missed something in this, so give me your take on it. But so she says, I want Aemond. Daemon literally, so I think these guys' names are like Blood and Cheese, according to the stuff that I've been reading online. They're the guys that Daemon hires to go kill Aemond. So he describes Aemond to them. Was that like a moment of opportunity that they just killed Jaehaerys, who is Aegon's son and heir to the throne? Was that just like a moment of opportunity because they were in the room and he was there? Because obviously, when Daemon is describing Aemond to them, he's an adult with like a scar across his face. It doesn't seem like there would be that much confusion. So what is your take on that? Because I was a little confused. I was just like, oh, are they just like, they are in this room, so they're taking the opportunity? Or like, what was that all about?
I mean, I think that was part of it, because I think it kind of gets to that point too of just like, hey, it's just a son.
Mhm.
But then I also kind of got the vibes of just like these two Loki are given the bumbling idiot type vibes who
Yeah,
just
that too.
are the henchmen that you're throwing,
Yeah,
they're
well, you get what you pay for. So.
right, exactly, that they're just be like, let's get this one then, I guess.
Yeah, let's get this one.
So that was also the vibes I got from that they were just
Yeah.
like incompetent people.
Nonetheless, still wild that they force mom to choose between the kids, and then they just straight up murder this, I don't know, like 3-4-year-old kid or something like that. Just like, oh my gosh, okay.
Right. Like,
Alrighty then. Like you said, just like bumped it up almost immediately to the Game of Thrones level of violence
right.
from what we were at last
Right.
season.
Literally.
Just like, oh my gosh, wow, okay. And then Helena, I think is the queen's name. She grabs her other kid, just runs into Alicent's room where she's where she's having sex with Kristen Cole, who's
Right.
the biggest douchebag in the whole like realm at this point. But like just walks in there and just sits down and like
Right.
checks out. She's like, nah, I'm done with this.
Right. And it's just like, hey, yeah, where are the rest of the guards or like other people in the castle? Like,
That's what I'm saying. Like Kristen Cole, something's gonna happen to him because like he's like the head of the Kingsguard right now.
Right,
So like this is on
seriously.
him.
right.
This is on him. It is kind of wild too that these like two bumbling idiot dudes
Got
just like
found their way
wander
in there.
in there,
Right.
find their way, like nobody's watching, and they literally walk past Aegon in the throne room too.
Right.
Like,
Literally. It's just like, what is going on?
yeah. And it was believable because like he had the rat catcher like outfit on, like,
Yep.
okay,
Who's gonna question
cool.
it, right? Yeah.
Right. Wild. Yeah, but that was the craziest. And this just Game of Thrones vibes, man. Like I remember watching the Red Wedding and I was just like eyes wide open for the whole episode. Like that's what I felt like for the last like 5-10 minutes of this episode. It brought me back.
Yep.
Brought me back. So yeah, I'm more invested in this show than I have been ever
Right.
since it was
Like
announced. Basically,
that's how you do a premiere. Like that's how
Yeah.
first episode we're getting everyone back in.
yep.
Butts and seats. Let's go.
Yeah,
Like that's how you do
exactly.
it.
That's how you get it back. A lot of interesting things happening. Rhaenyra is getting her throat. Zayne, okay, are you team black or are you team green?
Oh man, I think it's got to be black. Like I just
Okay, all right.
green. It's
I
just
thought you
too
were gonna
scummy.
Foolish choice for
I
a second
just-
there. I'm glad you didn't.
I just don't know how you can go with team green. Like I
You
get the
can't.
whole.
No.
I understand the whole argument of like two wrongs don't make a right or anything, but when you look at the whole scope of stuff, you're just like they're just kind of been. You don't want to say they deserve it, but they kind of do. Like
Right.
even from her dad, and so you're just like
Exactly. Dad's been scheming this whole
Yeah.
time, and they knew specifically that what's his face, Viserys or whatever, made Rhaenyra his heir,
right.
and then they twisted his last words into like, oh, actually, they wanted me to be
Right.
the heir.
Well, and then the fact that Rhaenyra she got completely like shafted by the whole
yeah,
thing.
absolutely.
I totally understand like her position on a lot of the stuff. You're just like, maybe that's more the whole part of gets into the Targaryen madness and stuff. That hey, maybe don't like screw over Targaryens.
Yeah, right.
That's maybe a
Exactly.
good life lesson
man.
in the Game of Thrones universe, but
Yeah. Right. Maybe that's not the smartest idea.
right.
I just keep wondering too. So obviously we're in this timeline of Aegon what do they call him? Aegon the Crazy or Conqueror?
Isn't
or
it the
something
Mad?
Like the Mad. Yeah, he like
Isn't
goes
it Aegon
nuts.
the Mad? Yeah.
Aegon the Mad, and like they talk about it all the time in the Game of Thrones show
Yes.
about Aegon and how he went crazy and stuff like that. I'm just like thinking, when is that happen? Like, is that way down the road when he's older? Is that like gonna be in the show? Like, that's what I keep
I
coming back to.
imagine, yeah, I imagine that's how the show's gonna end. Well,
Right.
I assume you're gonna see the descent of that, but then it's also gonna end with him like ultimately dying because
Right.
that's how that all ends.
Mhm.
But it's just like, I mean, you don't get a name like Aegon the Mad by just doing
Just being a normal king and
right.
stuff.
No, 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 like you did some stuff to get
He
that
did some
nickname,
stuff.
so
And he is like, somebody actually made the comparison online. Who is worse, Aegon or Joffrey Baratheon? And that's not even a question. Joffrey Baratheon is the like most vile villain in TV history. That dude is the worst. But Aegon he's not like the
he's got
coolest.
time.
He's got
He's
time to get worse for sure. But like he's just like a dude who didn't want to be king, number one, and doesn't care.
right.
Like that's what it comes down to for Aegon. Joffrey was just a horrible human being.
Right from the get go,
Yeah,
yeah.
from the get-go. Even before he had notions of being king. Like he's just a horrible person overall.
True, yeah.
Joffrey, and oh man, fiction-wise, he's a great character. Like
Oh
great
yeah.
character to hate. He's
hmm
man, every time he's on screen, I hated his guts so much. And
Right.
when he died in Game
Right.
of Thrones,
Everyone
it
cheered.
was the
Like,
most
yeah.
satisfying death of that whole series. Oh, it was so good. He was the worst. But yeah, Aegon doesn't even come close at this point. Like you
At
said,
this
like
point, right.
yet he's still got some time. You're
Yep.
right. It'll be interesting to see how that develops, though. All right, what do you think of House of the Dragon season 2, episode 1? What would you rate it?
Kind of like I said before, like that's how you kick off season. That's how you do a premiere. That's 6 out of 6. Like, yeah, take notes, people. Want to do a premiere? That's how you do it.
Yep, I got to give it a 6 out of 6 for the last 5 minutes too, because honestly, if it weren't for that, I'd give it a 5. It was solid. It was good.
Right.
Great acting. Everything about it is great, honestly, but nothing really blew me away until that last 5 minutes. And like I said, I'm more engaged right now than I have been in this whole show, season 1
Right.
included.
And yeah, you got to have the end that has you amped up because, like, all right, I can't wait for the next episode. I need to see the response to this. And it's just like, that's how you need to start a season. Like, don't lull people in and wait a couple episodes. Like, no, let's get into
And
it. Let's
not to mention, so Game of Thrones is actually, I mean, House of the Dragon, excuse me, is actually doing this better than most shows. We got a 1 hour episode. They dropped 1 episode because The Boys dropped 3, Acolyte dropped 2, Disney's in this thing where they dropped 2. They're doing that because dropping 1 episode doesn't give you enough. You're like, I need more. And granted, I am a fan of the weekly release thing because I like the hype that gets drummed up online. I like thinking about, what's going to happen, like the kind of the inner suspense of what's going to go on in the show, as opposed to binging the whole thing and then just being like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's over now.
Yeah.
But man, if you can do 1 episode that captures everybody that watches it to force them to watch the rest of the show, that's how you should do it. And House of the Dragon, in my opinion, did it better than both the Acolyte and The Boys so far.
Oh, agreed. For sure.
6 out of 6. Very excited for the rest of this show. All right. Now this is the part of the show where Zayne and Isaac nerd out. We're going to be talking about the Acolyte. Mini spoiler warning. We already got the big one, but if you haven't watched the Acolyte yet, probably pause this because Zayne and I are going to be spoiling everything. We're going to talk about episode 3 and 4, but first, Zayne, you weren't on last week, so I'm going to give you a chance to tell us what you thought about episodes 1 and 2, which were the premiere of the Acolyte. What did you think of them?
1 and 2, like, they were just okay. Like, it wasn't nothing that knocked my socks off. Like, it wasn't horrendous, but it was just more of a, especially on the first 2 episodes, it felt way more of just like a separate show, just kind of with a Star Wars skin on it. Because you're just like, just how the plot and everything set up, like it felt more like, hey, maybe just like a buddy space cop were looking for the criminal. Like there wasn't anything that you watch that you say, "Oh, this is Star Wars," because it was just like you could have, like I said, take the Star Wars veneer off of it, and that could be 2 episodes of any show on Sci-Fi Channel or any
Right.
like it didn't really do anything different. With that said, like it wasn't horrendous. Like some of the dialogue's just like okay. It was pretty basic stuff. So like for the first 2 episodes, I mean, maybe like a 4. Like it wasn't terrible, but like it also didn't really. I thought it was an okay start, but it was just also like, oh, okay. It didn't really get me excited. I mean, I'm excited because it's Star Wars, so keep watching
Right.
and stuff.
Yeah.
But it just like from what it did, it was just like it didn't do anything spectacular. I mean, I did like enough of that. It kind of presented like the mystery of it, like with everything with Osha, and like it did enough to be like, oh, okay, kind of get that mystery crime type thing going. But I'm just like, it's not a Star Wars feel, and it's like that you get that feeling from watching any other general show. So
Right.
from that aspect, yeah, I think it was decent enough to give it a 4. Yeah, there's some like minor gripes or different things, but it's just like I mean, it's Star Wars. I mean, some of the things that I know talk about online a lot. The one that bugged me, I mean, obviously, like the fire on the wing. Like I get fire in space, but like don't make it look like a campfire. Like that was my beef of it. Like it literally just looks like they built a campfire on the wing, and it's just like you could have done a little bit more. At least give it like oxygen propulsion, make it like a flamethrower or something. Make it like it just was just so like, oh, that's what they're doing. And then even not that it's full the immersion of it, but like the fact of her being the mech or the mechanic in that age really just makes no sense because you have droids for that. You don't have to pay a droid. Droids don't need to eat. They live in a closet. Like it makes no sense for a crew to have a person to do that.
Yeah. It would be interesting to dive into that a little bit because they mentioned in the episode that like astromechs basically just got developed. So they're probably not commonplace at that point yet. But
at the
still,
same
like,
time, it's just like but you see them in there, and like it's just one of those things that slightly breaks. Is like, how can she have the mech, the pip or whatever, her little thing, but then they don't have astromechs?
yeah.
Granted, it's just little nitpick.
Right.
Like it's like, all right, whatever. I'm not going to dwell on it.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was just like I said, it was just like, no.
And it's something that
Okay.
ultimately doesn't matter in the scope of the show.
Right, exactly. And then
So-
the beef too is the character that was pinned so much on this was Carrie-Anne Moss. Because it's Trinity, it's from Matrix. Like, yeah, she's gonna be in this. This is gonna be sweet. Get to see her be as a Jedi, and she dies right away. And
The
you're just like,
opening scene.
why? Yeah, you see her in the flashbacks, but you're like, you're seriously gonna kill her in the opening. So I was like, but that again, that's like nitpick. Like I understand for the story, but I'm like, really?
And somebody mentioned in one of the discords that I'm in that they love that opening scene, and I was like, it was cool. Like it was decent. Like it was a fun, cool fight scene. But I don't know, it just didn't like blow me away, and it didn't feel like Star Wars. Like you were
exactly.
saying.
Like I've heard that too. Like it was cool. It had cool choreography to it, but it felt more Matrix than Star Wars. Right. And I get part of that is maybe Carrie Moss was it, but it was just like Star Wars isn't like a martial arts thing.
Yeah.
Like it looks cool and how they incorporate using the Force in it, but it did feel more like, oh, this is should be a world in the Matrix.
And I'm okay with them like experimenting with different stuff. Obviously with first 2 episodes, like this happened again in episode 2 with Master Soul kind of facing down May on that planet. I'm okay with that. Like I like that they're doing different things. But again, like if we're comparing fight scenes, the Duel of the Fates and Phantom Menace is way more epic and cool than this fight scene in this TV show.
Well, I think that's what part of it just gets to it too, because it's just like, well, what is a Jedi known for? A lightsaber. Like it's a weapon from a more elegant time. Like that's the whole point. Like a Jedi, there's so much focus on their lightsaber, but then you basically have an entire fight where Jedi doesn't even use their lightsaber. Now I can understand if you want to make an argument of like, oh, they didn't feel as much of a threat, things like that. But at the same time, it's just like that's just not necessarily the Jedi. Like they always use their like that's their first draw. Like
Yeah.
that's their combat, all the different stances. Like it's all kind of the focal point of the lightsaber. But then even still, as you run that back, what are they practicing? Even in Acolyte, when they have those shots back in Coruscant and they're in the Jedi Temple, what are the Padawans practicing? Fighting with a lightsaber. They aren't
Mhm.
practicing hand-to-hand combat.
Right.
Like that's not a scene that's shown. Like any fight scene, it's you're practicing with
Yeah.
lightsaber.
I think it definitely, the first one, they definitely were doing it to get that Matrix effect with Carrie
Right.
Ann Moss for sure. The second one I like better because I think it plays more into the story of like Soul
Yeah.
sees May and he's like trying to save her. Like,
Right.
so that makes sense. Like, I don't want to draw my lightsaber because I don't want to kill this person.
Right.
Like the first scene, it was just like she didn't even know who she was at first.
right. And then
So why
someone
wouldn't you draw your lightsaber?
Well, right. Or especially when they come up and like, hey, I'm want to fight me with all your strength. I'm trying to kill you. Like, why would you go easy on that?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I mean, still cool fight scene.
Yeah.
It looked cool.
Yeah.
But it
still look cool.
It didn't feel Star Wars.
Yeah. I like that second one too with Master Soul. That definitely felt more like genuine and like fit in the actual scope of the show. But
I suppose even just on run of that too, I guess maybe this is kind of going to segue onto the next part, but like Master Soul he's been the best part of this show so far, in my opinion.
Amen. Yep.
He's he's been the best part. He's been fun to watch. Like he's the one kind of doing all the heavy lifting right now, in my opinion. So, and even still, like jumping ahead to episode 4 at the end there when he draws saber and it's blue. Like I was like, this is what we want to see, right? And you're just like, all right.
Yeah, definitely. Lee Jung-jae, who plays Master Soul, we mentioned on the previous episode, he learned English for this show, which is incredible. And he's killing it. Like, I think you're right. I think he's the best part of this too. I really like Daphne Keane as Jackie too. She's really fun and interesting. So moving on, episode 1 and 2. I've had pretty much the same thoughts as you, and you can check that out on episode 200 of the Infinity Bros podcast. It was fine. It was good. Didn't blow my socks off or anything like that. Episode 3 is the one that is breaking the internet right now on both sides, honestly, because I have heard people say, oh man, I don't even know how to get into this. I've heard people say that it is the best episode of Star Wars television ever. I've also had people say that it's the worst episode of anything ever and that it ruins Star Wars for them. It's like, people, let's just all calm down a little bit. Can we please take this into perspective? We're talking about a Space Wizards franchise.
Right.
This is also something that is not meant to be taken seriously. Star Wars started as a kids show, like a children's show. We don't need to start giving people death threats on the internet because Star Wars is happening. Like
it's make believe. Like it's not that serious. It's a make believe
show. Like, back off, everybody. If you don't like it, just don't watch it. It's not that hard.
Right.
But anyways, yes, episode 3, we get the Space Witches Coven. That is the backstory behind May and Osha and basically this whole show, as far as we know. Anyways, what did you think so far of that? Because we'll get into it, but like overall, I don't think it was a horrible episode, but I think it was very misplaced in the scope of this show.
I very much agree with that. I don't think it's the worst episode of anything ever done. With that said, I don't think it was actually good. Like I'd put it at maybe like a 3. I have other bigger issues with it. For me, what I'm looking at is, after I kind of just let it digest a little bit more after watching it, I need to see what more they do to connect the pieces to that episode.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they just leave it as that episode and we never get anything referenced to it again, or no other tie-ins,
if they do,
then honestly my rating would probably go down, and then I would put that significantly farther. If they don't touch that again, that's really, really bad.
Yep.
But I also want to have some reservation because, in just like at work, different things I've thought of and different things I've seen online, there are ways they could go back and tie stuff back in that would work, and I'd be like, all right, that would actually not be bad, or that'd be pretty cool. But it's all going to depend on what the rest of stuff happens and how the rest
Yeah.
of things pans out.
Mhm.
And so your knee jerk obviously is just like, man, that really wasn't that good. But I can see potential ways that tie into other stuff that can make it better. It's just all depending on if they do that or not. With that said, the one of my biggest gripes of that episode is do not tell me that May and Osha are twins in adulthood and then use two different girls when they're children. They don't look alike. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, they don't look alike. Like, why couldn't you get actual twins to play them?
Are they not? I mean, they are sisters
They're-
at least.
I mean, well,
but I
they're
don't know if they're
sisters.
twins. I
Well,
just
no,
see their same last name, but
well, they're sisters, but in adulthood, they're both played by the same
for
character
the same
to
character,
be
right?
identical
Same actors,
twins.
right?
But then why is the discrepancy as their kids either get identical twins or have one of them play both like you're doing the adult version? Or go the other way. Do the non-identical, the Luke Leia. They can be sisters, but they don't have to look alike. But then just have two different actresses when they're older. So it's like, where's the mismatch here?
I love that that's one of your nitpicks because I didn't even notice that.
Dude,
So,
I noticed that and it just bothered me.
I did
Every
notice
time
that those child actors were not that great of actors.
I mean, that adds to it too. Like they weren't super good, but I was
No.
just like, how are you gonna? You're trying to sell me this as they're twins, but they don't look alike. They look similar, but like they're very not identical twins, which you're trying to sell later on in life. Because I was just like, And then of course too, the whole bit of like, hey, I'm gonna trap you in this room and light you on fire, even though you're in a stone room. Like there's no wood. But this whole room is going to light on fire. And I was like...
Zayne's all about the
I guess I'm just...
The bricks and the bolts of Star Wars.
It was just odd to me because I was just like, I don't know, maybe I still just had the campfire on the wing from episode 1. And so now I'm just being extra critical of it because I'm just like, it's stone. That's not going to catch on fire.
That is... I'm cracking up that those are the things that you're having nitpicks with. Out of all the things in this episode, Zayne's hung up.
I got more. The chant, like I put a little more effort in. That's one of the dumbest chants I've ever heard.
Yeah, that was silly.
And the fact that then their hand motions looks like they were playing volleyball. Come on, you could do more with that.
I can get behind the coven of Force Witches. That's fine because
I got no problem with the Night Sisters.
The galaxy is huge. The Night Sisters are there. Like, there's other stuff. Like, that's fine. But yeah, it was just like overall lame. Like,
exactly.
It wasn't.
Don't tell me. Exactly. Like, you're gonna be like the. And I've seen some people called Night Sister. I hope there's something slightly different than Night Sisters, but still in that same vein.
That was my initial thought, but then like after the whole episode was over, I was like, they can't be Night Sisters.
It's similar but different. Like they didn't have the green, the ichor, just different. But it's just like
definitely more seemed like almost like the homemade version of Jedi. Like they're very like in tune with the Force, which they don't call the Force or whatever, but
maybe that's something you could look at. Maybe the Night Sisters are kind of more of the witches kind of on the dark side. Maybe these guys are more in the middle, which makes sense. You have all these different, but it's just like that's your ceremony.
Yeah.
That was so lame. Like you said, you couldn't come up with a better.
Yeah, they could have worked on that a little bit and come up with some better, more interesting visuals. Number one, and some more interesting dialogue with that.
Which
sure,
ultimately, because I know this is something I brought up in the chat. Ultimately, like I get some of this are nitpicks, different things come back around. But I still can't wrap my head around I have yet to get an episode that feels like it. Maybe 4 has gotten a little closer. But the fact that each of these episodes is coming in at about $22.5 million production cost, I don't see it.
I don't see it. Yeah.
I don't see it. And I think that's also been part that's really been bugging me because I get if they're working on a limited budget and you're like, all right, we're going to just kind of scrap some stuff together. But like some of these little nitpicks that I have, I'm just like, when you have $22.5 million to make each of these episodes, I feel like, yeah, maybe I'm nitpicking, but these shouldn't be there when you're getting that much to make per episode.
Right. If they can make Godzilla -1 the whole movie for less than one of your episodes,
right,
and it's this quality,
Right.
I don't know, man. I don't
I
feel
got a
good
beef with
about it.
that.
Like,
And maybe
again,
that.
it's not horrible. Like, it's not like
Right.
I don't watch this and I'm like, this is terrible TV. I'm just like, it's just not that interesting
Right.
necessarily.
And
It's not my favorite Star Wars. And
right.
for some people it is, and that's great. Like, if you guys enjoy this first 3 episodes of the show, good. I'm happy for you. It just didn't grab me, didn't
Right.
like draw me in.
Like I said, I didn't have my first this feels like Star Wars moment until the
Right.
end of the 4th
Till
episode.
the end of the 4th
and
episode.
that's kind of a problem. It shouldn't take to the end of 4 episodes to get really that feeling.
Yeah.
But then also, like I said, the whole money part, hopefully maybe the back end, as we get more episodes, that's maybe where we start seeing more of this budget
Right.
come in.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet. I'm holding out hope for that.
Mhm.
But it's just like, yeah, through 4 episodes, you're just like, I mean, it's just,
Yep.
it's been very meh.
We mentioned earlier, the timing of this episode to me is just so strange because they kind of set up this show as this murder mystery type thing, right? It would have been so much cooler if you played the mystery of the twins longer into the show. We got it revealed in episode 2 that they're twins. Then in
Right.
episode 3, we got their backstory. Like, I mean,
Right.
if we had gotten the twin reveal in episode 4 or 5 and then had this backstory episode in episode 6 or 7, I feel like that's way more impactful than what we're getting. And obviously now they're kind of shifting that murder mystery to like, who the heck is this
Right.
Sith
And it's
thing?
been
Like, what is that?
Right. It's been such a quick jump. And like, I even told you that, like, when we first like logged on for this, I was like, what we got for episode 4, that should have been episode 3.
Right, exactly.
Like, it really should have. It would have made way more sense.
I like the backstory. I like that, but
Right.
it definitely
It just was so out of
seemed
place.
misplaced.
Yeah.
Exactly. You mentioned a bunch of nitpicks in there. The one nitpick that I had was, okay, so we've got Mother Anastasia, right? And I'm looking through this cast list and I don't remember. Coral.
Coral.
That was the other
Coral.
mother or whatever. Coral.
Yeah, Coral.
Coral.
I need you to have these babies,
like, okay.
Coral.
This has been a hot topic on the internet, and honestly, the main focus of this, I don't have an issue with. So, Mother Anastasia somehow manipulates the Force to implant these twins in Coral. They specifically say, Coral says, I carried them. So why do they look like Mother Anastasia when Coral, like, that does not compute in my brain?
Well,
I don't.
Again, this is what I would say. Like, it's all going to depend on what they tie back in and answer from
Right.
this.
Yeah.
Because I've had that question too, and I saw someone make this comment that I was like, oh, that's actually really interesting. Of what if part of what's not being revealed that the Jedi found out, like, what if it's not entirely the Force conception, like that everyone has immediately like tying with Anakin. What if Mother Anastasia, those are actually clones of hers?
Ooh.
And the Force part was giving them the Force abilities and using that to, basically using the Force as,
that would be like
IFV.
Tying Bad Batch
Right.
into the Acolyte. That would be
right. But see, that's also the problem I've really had, because I think all this stuff like, oh, that'd be really interesting. But in the back of my head, I'm just like, they're not going to do this.
No.
Like, they're not going to tie this in. They're not going to make this. And then it just makes me just kind of bitter on that, because, that's just going to be left how it is. And you're like, explain this more.
Yeah.
Like, tie this in more. Like, the more you just leave this open, just kind of the worse it gets.
Yeah. Let's dive into this a little bit here. So this is another thing that has been breaking some people's minds on the internet for probably not a good reason. Like, it doesn't need to be this hard, people. Like, just, if you don't like it, cool. Like, just don't watch the show.
Right.
Like, it's not that hard. Okay. But there's a loud minority of people on the internet that have been saying that the Force conception between Mother Anastasia and Coral basically negates the speciality of Anakin being like Force concepted. What do you think about that? Does them being made by the Force make Anakin's being made by the Force less special?
I don't necessarily think it makes it. I mean, I think it ties a little bit, and the only reason, like, I'll explain why it's still, I think, unique enough. My beef more of being less special because I just feel like it's lazy writing, because you're just like, hey, I'm just gonna take the Anakin story and do my own thing with, like, you're just like, I mean, okay, but you're just like, well, we've kind of seen this before. It's like when someone's like, all right, can I copy your homework? All right, but just change it a little bit so it doesn't look exactly the same, but it's
Yeah.
still there. You're like,
Mhm.
so I think why it doesn't entirely like negate it is because Anakin was purely created by the Force.
Right.
Like, it wasn't
It wasn't somebody trying to
it wasn't
manipulate the
exactly.
Force.
It wasn't someone trying to manipulate the Force. It wasn't because of something people were doing, because it's like, it was never. I know the whole Plagius stuff, but like, that was a dream. Like, none of that was actually canon. Nothing actually manipulated the Force into creating Anakin. The Force responded by creating Anakin to balance things out. Whereas with the twins, it was, at least of what we've seen, or the little bit we've had from this episode, is that they manipulated the Force for this to happen.
Mhm.
So there is a bit of nuances there, but again, like I said, I think it's still just kind of lazy. Like, it's just
Right.
slightly changing up someone else's homework for the story.
Mhm.
But to my point earlier, it's just like, do more to explain this. And I think that, I don't know if it entirely smooths stuff over, but like, it adds more to the story if you do more to explain this. If they just leave episode 3 out there and everything we saw in episode 3, and there's nothing that ties back into it, there's nothing that ties back into the further story, and they just leave it out there, I think that really hurts most stuff. Because, like, I had the thought too that it'd be really cool that, let's say you do tie this into Plagius, and let's say this is what starts his obsession with wanting to create, or the obsession with immortality and wanting to manipulate the Force to create life, because maybe he heard about a coven that did this, and now you can tie this in. Well, he was a very scientific minded, Sith. Well, what would he want to do from that? He'd want to find those kids that were created via this method. So then he goes and finds May. So now you could tie that in, like, maybe, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be he's the actual Sith that she's working for, but like, have that person working for him. Like, tie that in, because it all can then make sense, because that's can be the jumping point. Maybe that was part of inspiration of stuff, but then use May, manipulate her, because, well, he doesn't want other people to know what's going on. So who were the other people that knew what was going on that planet? Those 4 Jedi. So get, May to kill those 4 Jedi, so other people don't find out. So, like, I feel like there is a ways to tie this back in that would be really cool, but just in the back of my head, I feel like I just don't feel like they're going to do that.
Yeah.
I want them to, and I think that would be a great benefit. I just don't feel like it's going to happen.
There is a theory out there, and I saw this after seeing episode 3, and I really like this theory. If they do it, that episode 3 was just Osha's perspective of everything that went on, and that we might get either May's or maybe even like Soul's like perspective of the backstory later on, because there are a lot of things that don't get answered in that. May seems very aggressive as a young child, potentially could be just like Osha's childhood memories of like how all that went down. Some interesting points that were kind of just glossed over when Soul is taking Osha through the kind of main room. All the witches are like dead on the floor. There's no fire around them or anything. And Soul's like, oh, we gotta go. Just like
what
ushering
happened?
her out the door. What the heck happened there? And then the other part is when they get back on the ship, they show the crew Torben, who previously is a Padawan and normal. We see him get killed in episode 2. He's got a big giant scar on his face. In the ship, after they collect everybody and are flying off of the planet, they intentionally keep Torben way in the background, but you can kind of see a blurred version of his face. So something went down that they didn't show.
Right.
And I'm assuming because again, like you said, if they don't come back to this, it's a bad episode.
Right.
If they do come back to it and they explain some more, it can be salvaged. I think it can be a solid backstory. But we got to know what the heck happened between everybody else, because why the heck else would May want to murder everybody? I just don't. The
Right.
dots aren't connecting at this point. So we need more information. I'm still intrigued to see what went on and to see if the internet is collectively going to explode when they find out the Master Soul is actually a bad guy or something like that, you
Right.
know?
Or even like, I guess then to tie that in more with like from episode 4, which again was one of those things that I was like, that just seems like such an inconsistency, but we need more answers of how quickly May gave up her quest.
Yeah.
And for like instantly like, oh no, Osha's alive. Like, all right, I'm going to just betray the master now. Like, you've already killed 2 Jedi.
Right.
Now all of a sudden you're just like, I don't want to do this now.
Yeah.
Like, huh?
And she did say a lot. I had that same exact thought. I was like, really? She just like up and stops
Right.
thinking that way. But she did say one line that made me like kind of reel back after thinking about it a while. She's like, Osha's alive. Like, this changes everything. She finds out in episode 2 that Osha's alive. Like, they have that eye contact where Osha's in the alley with the whatever stunner or stun gun or something like that, and she's in the speeder, and they make eye contact, and they're like, holy crap, oh my gosh, like, they're alive. Maybe that did trigger something in her mind, like, I need to do this? Like,
well, I mean, it's possible, but then I think that
but they didn't show that. That's the problem.
Right. But I also think that is what ties into the testament of like episode 3 being so out of place, because episode 3 ended. She's literally trying to kill her because she wanted to be a Jedi.
Yeah.
And so now we get into halfway through 4, and all of a sudden, oh no, she's alive. I need to throw away everything I've been doing these past 16 years. Like, you were literally just trying to kill her as kids, and that's why you were separated. But now all of a sudden,
as a 9 or 8 or 9-year-old, to have the know-how, number one, and the willingness to murder your
sibling,
twin sibling, there's something wrong there.
Right.
Like, there's something wrong about that. And you kind of delved into episode 4 a little bit. We get this basically quest that the Jedi are going to find Kelnaka, hopefully before May catches him, murders him, blah, blah, blah. May is escorted by Khmer, who we see in episode 2. Big theory going on online that Khmer is actually the Sith Lord.
Mm-hmm.
There's some interesting points about that in this. May figures that there's something weird going on with Khmer.
Right.
She I don't think she suspects that he is the Sith Lord, but she knows that there's something weird going on. So she sets a trap, catches him, and that's the last we see of him, which is interesting because obviously in the final scene, we get the Sith Lord that just pops up out of nowhere. Incredible reveal for that Sith Lord. It was one of the creepiest moments in Star Wars probably ever, which is we need more.
That was very well
Star
done,
Wars, bro. Like, that was amazing how we're like the camera is focused on Osha, and then you just see floating down
slowly
in the background.
In.
Oh man, I'm getting like kind of goosebumps just thinking about it right now.
That was very well. That was the first time I've been like, all right, I can see where the 22.5 million is coming in.
Right?
But like, again, that's the first time.
Right, exactly.
That was so cool. And like we kind of mentioned earlier, like that was the first like, oh, this is a Star Wars moment.
This is Star Wars.
Right, this is Star Wars. Like, yeah, but like legit, that was it.
Yeah.
But then episode immediately ends, and you're just like, well, okay, he comes and absolutely just rocks all the Jedi, just launches them all.
Cliffhanger. Oh man, that was a great cliffhanger.
And then it just ends, and you're like, oh my gosh, why did we not get this earlier? Like,
right. And man, and I understand they may be doing this just for dramatic effect, but my first thought was he gets so close to Osha. They're literally like inches away, like face to face. He could have just killed her right there. So like he wants her alive for something, I would imagine. If it turns out that he's just trying to kill them all, that was just like a whole dramatic thing that they did. I mean, it worked. It was incredible.
Right.
But like, dude was powerful enough to literally not wipe out, but like push back a whole squad of Jedi. Like, he could have absolutely just killed Osha in seconds there. So there's something very interesting. And by the way, too, the helmet incredible, creepy. Like, this is horror Star Wars. Like,
Right.
this is wow. That was the moment that I was like, okay, I am now 100. I mean, I've always think it's Star Wars. Like you mentioned earlier, I'm gonna watch this show no matter what.
Right.
So that was the moment that I was like, okay, I'm excited about this show now. That was a really, really cool moment.
Right.
Way to end the 4th episode.
So I gotta give even props, even just on the costume design, like you're seeing it on the helmet. But not only is it just the helmet, but then just the fact how that bottom part, how all those little, I don't know, beaker, the bracelet, they look like
jaw.
teeth.
Yeah,
It almost looked like a jaw and a big smile, like
right?
a big creepy
I know,
smile.
it's so creepy.
How that was
Loved
incorporated into the helmet. Like, okay, that was really cool design. So like, mad props to that. That was very well done.
Like
But,
you said,
yeah,
that's where you're starting to see the money and where it's looking good. I mean, everything else looks good too, but it's nothing like popping out like, holy crap. Like, I can see why they spent a crap ton of money on this show.
Right.
Scope of the story here. I mean, May specifically goes into Kilnaka's house, finds that he's already been murdered by a fresh, seemingly lightsaber wound. So we'll see. That's now the mystery. We've pivoted from May and Osha to this Sith Lord guy. What the heck is going on with him?
Right.
Was it him that killed Kilnaka? I mean, they definitely are implying that he is the one that killed Kilnaka.
Right. That's definitely the implication, yeah.
Right. But are we thinking that there's somebody else in play here? Where the heck did Khmer go? Is that Khmer as the Sith Lord?
Part of me still feels like Khmer is a bit of a red herring.
Yeah,
like
I can see that.
I just feel like that theory's it's just too easy for it to be him. I definitely think that there's more to Khmer. Yeah. Maybe he's kind of apprentice more style. Like there's more to him, but I don't think he's necessarily the master. Like I don't know. I just feel like that's too easy, the explanation.
Mm-hmm. I could definitely see that too. Yeah, it would be kind of like they're leading us to believe that, and then if it turned out to be true, it'd be like, oh, okay. Well,
right. Like that just almost seems a little too predictable. But it also, like, I get the deception part, but I'm also just like, with how menacing the Sith Lord came in, and then I get that it's the perfect cover, of just kind of the Jameer, just kind of that. But again, if that's the route they go, I feel like, okay, well, now you're just stealing the theory of Jar Jar Binks from the original. The bumbling idiot who then the theory was supposed to be Jar Jar Binks was supposed to be a Sith Lord, blah, blah. Okay, well, like that's not a new idea. You're still just copying that. So I'm just like, that's not what I would want to see here. Like, I can get it. It would fit. But I feel like if that's the story beat they decided to go with, I'd be like, that'd be kind of disappointing. I think this is, like I said, with how much we have in the universe, like, you can do new stuff. I want to see more new stuff. And so much of the story beats that we've had so far is just, twins, we've had that. Born of the Force, we've had that. Like, there's so much of the stuff that's just like, all right, it's kind of been different angles, but we've yet to get anything new. We have witches. We have so much of this stuff that it's just slightly different. Like, give me something that we haven't seen yet. Give me something unique to this show. Yeah. Is what I would love to see. And you got the glimpse of it. I'd love to see that continued with this Sith Lord, because like we haven't seen that kind of that creepy feel from a Sith Lord yet. I'd love if the show like continued to explore that. That'd be really cool.
I believe we have 4 episodes left. I think it was 8 episodes.
Yes, that sounds right.
So, I mean, we're only halfway through. We got a lot left to go. Probably, like we said, digging into a little bit of backstory. Obviously, going to hopefully continue that murder mystery vibe, which in that last 3 minutes of that episode ramped up a ton. Because I feel like they are just, if they had pushed all this stuff back, it would have made those reveals so much more interesting. The reveal that May and Osha are twins and that they're alive and stuff like that, like, it
felt like the hand was being shown too early.
Right. It didn't have the impact that I think they intended. Because first episode, honest to God, I did not know that they were supposed to be 2 different people until about like 20 minutes into the episode. Like
Right.
if they had just kept that up for 3 or 4 episodes, like how cool would that have been?
Right.
You know?
Or even go further on to tease it, because like we know shapeshifters exist in the, like, maybe
True.
try to plant a seed that, oh, maybe this was a shapeshifter, maybe, but like, oh, mystery solved immediately, and it was just kind of like,
Yeah.
oh,
Right.
we
Yeah, for
didn't
it being
get anything from
hyped
that.
up as a mystery type
Right.
show, it sure seems like they're kind of just like giving us all this information that could have been cool reveals.
Right. But I mean, you never know. Sometimes you got a different character. Like the Mandalorian episodes when he's in the Book of Boba Fett, like those are the best episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. Maybe
True.
this is what the Acolyte's going to be. Maybe it's going to be one of those shows that, hey, skip the first 4 episodes. Maybe the last 4 are going to be sweet lightsaber battles, sweet stuff with the Sith Lord. You know, maybe the last 4 will be all right. Just skip the first 4, watch the last 4. You know,
Yeah, true.
you don't know, but like kind of like that's the thread. You know, that's the theme, the thread here.
Good one.
But like, yeah, I think that's the bigger thing of if they don't do anything to tie stuff back in decently with episode 3, then that's a huge miss.
Yeah.
But
Agreed.
I'm still gonna hold off some of that reservation because like they still have 4 episodes to tie more of that in, and so like they can tie more stuff up, and I'd be more content. But if they don't, then yeah, more of the diss, and I don't want to go as far as say hate, but more of the disappointment on this is definitely more real.
Couple things before we kind of wrap up here. Number one, we see glimpses of Ki-Adi-Mundi and Plo Koon in the Jedi Temple in Coruscant. And I don't know about Plo Koon. I didn't look into him, but they actually credit the actor as Ki-Adi-Mundi in the credits, which to me is kind of wild. I didn't think we were gonna see any previous Jedi. Also was like weird because this is 100 years before Phantom Menace.
Right. Well, because that's I saw a thing that someone had posted and shared, and that it's kind of a lore breaking thing because he shouldn't be there. And not only that, but like if you go back to the Phantom Menace, Ki-Adi-Mundi is the one who's in the council that says, "Oh, the Sith haven't been seen in a millennia." But then he's back in the Acolyte, and they're like, "Oh, this might be the presence of a Sith Lord."
That doesn't bother me that much because that just like shows the arrogance of the Jedi and like,
well right.
He's at Coruscant. Like he doesn't go to the planet. He doesn't see this thing. I'm guessing that this is going to turn out to be a legend among the official Jedi. Like the people who were on that planet that saw that dude, obviously they are going to know that, hey, there's the Sith Lord right there.
Right. But I think that's kind of ties in. It's kind of just another one of those nitpicks that you're just like, you know, all these nitpicks start adding up. And like going back to with how much money and everything that's been put in this show, and like get like the whole argument, give us new stuff. Like it's cool, but you're also just like, well, this is 100 years before everything else. Why is Ki-Adi-Mundi there? Granted, I guess I don't know all the in-depths of his species or how long they live or, you know, anything else like that, but it's just like a cool reference, but at the same time, like it wasn't necessarily one that needed to be there, you know?
I looked this up because I was curious about it. On Wikipedia, excuse me, previously it had said that he was born in 93 BBY, which is about 50 years after this show. This show happens in 132 BBY. Right. So yeah, lore breaking, as you say. I mean, the only reference to his birth is like a computer encyclopedia of the Phantom Menace. Like it's like just a throwaway reference. It's not like lore breaking per se, but I do really appreciate when creators see this stuff and they match it up. Like that would have been really cool. Is it a big deal? No, it's not a big deal, but still at the same time would have been cool if they like respected all that previous stuff has come before. But as kids, like, wasn't it the coolest thing to do that? Or like the Star Wars encyclopedia books, just look up random facts about stuff that doesn't even matter. Like I specifically remember I had this one that had a page or two that went over Jedi uniforms, and it literally labeled every single part of their uniform, including their boots, like what their boots were made out of, like just stuff that is like totally irrelevant, does not matter at all. But I absolutely ate that stuff up.
Right. Or even just like, yeah, you watch the movies and it doesn't matter, but then like you go into all the intricacies of the 7 forms of lightsaber combat. You're just like,
right.
It's cool. It's fun
awesome.
to nerd out on.
Amazing.
But like it's not necessary to watch any of the shows.
Sure.
Like,
yeah. So lore breaking is maybe a strong word.
Maybe
for
timeline breaking.
Timeline breaking, sure. I would consider myself like a Star Wars timeline nerd. I enjoy looking up all that stuff, like where that happens on the Star Wars timeline and stuff like that. A little bit of a bummer when I did like see that and look it up, but at the same time, it was cool to see a reference to some of those. And why wouldn't you just put Yoda in there somewhere too? Because like he's 900 years old. Everybody knows.
Well,
that.
I think that's a rumor. Supposedly later
that he'll show up later. Yeah,
right.
Maybe.
Was a supposed rumor, which would also be another sweet thing. Let Yoda fight that Sith Lord.
Yeah, dude, let's go.
I'll never get tired of watching Yoda in a lightsaber fight.
Man, I remember as a kid watching Yoda fight Count Dooku for the first time.
He's flipping around, jumping off wall. Like you're just like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Incredible. And okay, so now that we're talking about lightsaber combat, that was the other thing I wanted to mention before we wrap stuff up. They see the Sith Lord, all of the Jedi, which they have, I don't know, like 7 or 8 of them in their like pack, their crew. They all whip out their lightsabers. They've got blue, green, yellow. I don't remember if we saw any purple ones in there, but like just seeing the variety of colors in there was just like, that's where you and I both were probably just like, this is Star Wars. Let's go.
Like it's so cool.
It reminded me of that moment in Attack of the Clones, which I don't know. I probably mentioned this on the podcast, but Attack of the Clones is my least favorite Star Wars movie. Like it's boring to me, and I love Star Wars.
The only cool part's the arena scene.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It reminded me of the arena scene.
That's
where
why you
all
watch
the
Attack of the Clones.
Are running at the droid army with their lightsabers. That's the word you're like, oh yes, let's go.
Yep. That's why you watch that movie. Yep.
Oh, so good.
You watch it for that part, and you watch it for the hello there, General Kenobi. Yes. That's why you watch it.
That's Revenge of the Sith.
Is it from that one?
Yep,
no,
General.
Because isn't that from the platform?
Grievous doesn't show up. Grievous doesn't show up until Revenge of the Sith.
I could have swore he was in the end of Attack of the Clones.
They mention him, I think, at the end of Attack of the Clones, but he doesn't show up until Revenge of the Sith.
Right, fair enough.
I dare you to go look that up, because I've had that exact same thought. I said that, and then Scott,
it blends together.
Those 3 episodes honestly do blend together for me. The whole prequel trilogy. That's like the childhood thing, because like I probably watched them so much as a child. They're just like all one.
Well, I think what adds to that too is that Clone Wars takes place between the two, and Grievous is such a big part of Clone Wars.
Yes,
that it just feels like it's bookended right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good stuff. All right, Zane, I think we got to wrap things up. So what are your ratings of episodes 3 and 4 of The Acolyte?
Yeah, 3. I gave it a 3. I'm going to hold it at a 3. If they find a way to tie back in, I'm willing to maybe bump that up to like a 4. If they don't do anything with it, I think that actually would drop it down to like a 2. Because I just... It's all depending on what they further do with it.
Right.
Episode 4, it did enough of like what 1 and 2 did. I'm going to give it a 4. But that last like 2 minutes, I'm gonna give a 6. It was just so cool, but only that last chunk, because it was so cool. It's what I've been waiting for. But I suppose, the episode in total, I'll just give it a 4. It's on par with what 1 and 2 were. Like it wasn't anything special, but it was okay.
I think I will give the 3rd episode a 3.5. I still, it still had good elements to it. There definitely were more things to nitpick, which obviously we kind of went through a lot of them. I think the last 2 minutes of episode 4 really elevated that one for me. And I did enjoy that episode in general. Just felt more like Star Wars. We were on like that forest world. And it just was like, hey man, I like this. Oh, and we didn't even mention him, Basil. Coolest new Star Wars character. What do they call him? gulp shittos or whatever, just random Star Wars characters.
Running around,
the internet is going to be freaking about Basil for the next couple of weeks here.
Being an otter, just tracking stuff. Like, all right, man.
Oh my gosh. Love that guy. So yeah, this episode just felt more Star Warsy in general. I'm going to give that one a 4.5. I probably would have given the first 2 episodes a 4.5 as well, somewhere in there. But I think this one is a little bit more enjoyable to me. So there you go. Those are ratings of episodes 3 and 4 of The Acolyte. And that wraps up another Zayne and Isaac mess around of the Infinity Bros podcast. We've already been talking for like an hour and 45 minutes.
I know, right? And honestly, we could have talked longer. Yeah. That's what happens.
Get us going on Star Wars, man, and we can just talk forever.
Yep.
It's a good thing and also a bad thing.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
It's a good thing for you and I. I feel like it's a bad thing for some people that maybe don't listen for Star Wars.
You know what? Well, that's too bad for them. You can
Sorry.
listen to us in our terrible.
I'm not sorry, actually, because
yeah,
I'm having too much fun to tone it down. So,
and if you don't like it, start your own podcast and
yeah, do that. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us wherever you're listening, however you're listening. Thank you so much for making us a part of your podcast experience. We love you 3000. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at the Infinity Bros. You can also check out our website at theinfinitybros.com for links, reviews, and sweet merch. Feel free to send listener feedback via social media or email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.